Hello, my friends. Good morning. How are you? I'm so happy to be with you. Happy Sunday. And today I thought we'll talk about a subject that's getting a lot of attention in the scientific literature, and also many people are getting familiar with these terms: genetics, epigenetics, gene activation, etc. So I thought I'd give you my take on it, and I would like to share with you how this deeper understanding of gene activity is going to change our understanding of our biological organism and what it is, and how we can reinvent that which we call our physical body. So now I'm going to wait till we get to about 1,000 people. In the meanwhile, thank you, Julie Alvarez, for your comments. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Hinz. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Jeff Davis. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Dana. Where are all the guys? Thank you, Mandy Stevens. Thank you, everyone, for joining here. And so my goal today is to share with you how we can reinvent our body by resurrecting our souls. I mentioned that before as well. It's the title of one of my books, actually, Reinventing the Body, Resurrecting the Soul. And in order to do that, let's see what the latest science is. What is genetics? What is epigenetics? And how does consciousness and conscious experience relate to both epigenetic activity and gene activity? And as I'm saying this, Keith is saying is epigenetics linked to emotions? Yes, amongst other things. So let me actually go over the principles of gene expression, what epigenetics is, and how experience and the interpretation of experience shapes our phenotype, which means the appearance, the shape, and the biochemical identity of our body. This is a very important understanding. So let's go over the relationship between genes, the epigenome, and biological processes first. Okay? So first of all, what is a gene? A gene is a stretch of DNA that codes for a protein. Simple. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid and refers to 4 chemical bases: ATCG, adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. These are called the alphabet of life. So just like there are long words and there are short words using the same alphabets, so too there are long stretches of DNA, which are genes, and there are short stretches of DNA, which are also genes. But when the Genome Project was initiated and completed, so-called completed, in the year 2000, it was felt that we knew everything about gene expression and biology. 2003. It turned out not to be true. One of the things that at that time was being puzzled over, or people were trying to figure it out, was only 2.5% of DNA seemed to be coding. So only 2.5% of our DNA seemed to code for proteins. The rest was referred to as junk DNA. Now it turns out, of course, that is not true. So the algorithms that were written, the mathematical algorithms that were written at that time for the Genome Project apparently did not look for genes that were less than, say, 100 base pairs, which means longer stretches of DNA. Anything shorter than that was not even looked at. And now we know that there are genes that are just 21 base pairs instead of 100 base pairs or more. So every bit of our genome is doing something to keep us alive. And junk DNA, therefore, is not a good word. Now the DNA, which is between the usual genes, the 25,000 genes that we inherited from our parents, a lot of DNA between the usual genes that people talk about. And the intergenic DNA is no longer referred to as junk DNA. It is referred to by many names, but it seems that what we call junk DNA is actually intergenic DNA that regulates the activity of your genes. So it's epigenetic activity also. And this epigenetic activity of genes also causes what is called morphogenesis and differentiation. Morphogenesis means give rise to form, and differentiation, how the one becomes the many. So life starts as a single fertilized egg, one cell, which differentiates in all these trillions of cells, as I've said before, more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and they all come from the same genome. Your eyes, your nose, your teeth, your fingernails, your brain, your genitalia, your hair follicles, whatever part of your body you look at, it comes from one cell. So what makes that cell differentiate in different directions is epigenetic activity. So what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of its genetic code itself. So, for all practical purposes, the genes that you were born with are like little cards that you were dealt with for the game of life. But now you have to play these cards. Okay, so that is what we call epigenetic activity. And epigenetic activity is a result of chemical tags to chromosomes. Chromosomes are the double helix, and you have about 46 of these. And epigenetic activity is done through chemical tags into chromosomes that in fact turn on and turn off genes, just like light switches or dimmers. So your genes can turn on, they can turn off, and they can increase in activity like a dimmer switch. You can turn on the intensity of the light, and you could turn it down. And this is happening all the time in our genes. They're going on, off, some are going very active and some are not so active, and all of that depends on the experience you're having in that particular moment. And these gene activities, which are epigenetic activations, can be inherited. So you can inherit, as a result of epigenetic activity, physical appearance, biochemical characteristics, and the current thinking is that it's the interplay of nature and nurture. So genes and environment. And epigenetic represents everything that we call environment, which is anything outside the genome. So that's the current understanding. Okay, and we also know that in addition to the 25,000 genes we have that we got from our parents, we have up to between 2 million and 20 million genes that are microbial genes in our gut. And these are dependent on our diet, but also where we live and the environment where we are, etc., etc. So microbial genes, of course, outnumber human genes in the ratio of 150 to 1. So what are these microbial genes? Unlike the human genes that you cannot change your human genes, you can in fact change your microbial genes. You can change the population of your microbial genes. And since they are most of the genes in your body, then you can change literally up to 99% of genes in your body. And of the 1% that are 1%, 5%, doesn't matter, but the minuscule amount of genes that are actually inherited, you can change their activity as well through epigenetic modulation. So you can change your microbiome completely, which means you can change your genetic software completely, the microbial one, and the human one you can influence through conscious choices and how you experience everyday reality. Some ways to improve your microbiome include things like prebiotics and fermented foods like kimchi and yogurt and kanji and many other drinks, and also things like kombucha, but also prebiotic fiber like cabbage, radish, and celery, and anything that has lots of fiber will also change the population of your microbiome. If you cut down the sugar in your diet, and in fact, if you eliminate sugar in your diet, then your microbial gene activity will also change, but also your gene population, and also will cut down the inflammation of your microbiome. Also, stress will cause the bad genes to get activated. Bad genes means genes that cause inflammation, and joy and happiness will create the opposite, okay? And so managing stress, meditation, practicing yoga, exercise, influencing vagal tone, chanting, meditation, yoga postures, pratyahara, interoception, this will all change your microbiome activity for the better. Also, antibiotics can destroy the microbiome, and therefore if you try not to take antibiotics except in acute emergency, that will improve your gene expression and your microbiome as well. Good sleep is very important for gene regulation, and also disinfectants and things like toxins like smoking and meat that is contaminated by chemicals can all cause dysbiosis. Dysbiosis means dysfunction of the microbiome. And we can change all this. So we can completely change all this through our behavior and our activities every day, the common activities that we partake of, like eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, sensory experience, and how we interpret what is happening to us. So, what's the connection? Well, the connection is if you can change more than 90% of the gene population, which is bacterial, and you can influence the remaining 5% or so, or less, much less, through lifestyle, and then you can actually change the software that prints out your body, which is a process that is regulated by the interrelationship between genes, epigenome, and microbiome. These chemical tags that modulate gene activity, turning the switches on and off increasing the volume or dimming the volume in the direction of homeostasis or self-regulation, is entirely influenced by the metabolism of what we call experience. So what is experience? Experience is just perceptual activity and interpretation of perceptual activity. That's it. And we metabolize experience into the molecules of our body. And so instead of looking at genes, epigenome, microbiome, inflammatory markers, hormones, immune cells, all of these as different entities, they are actually entangled activities. You change one, you affect all of the others. So the body functions as a whole. An entire biological process in time as a result of the entanglement of every experience. Entanglement of every experience. And what is experience? It's the interpretation of perceptual activity, period. That's all. So I emphasize interpretation also of perceptual activity, not just perceptual activity. Perceptual activity is within a narrow band of activity for all species. So we hear sounds within a certain frequency. We see our vision is between 300 and 800 nanometers of frequency, etc., etc. So every experience we have is within a certain narrow range of perceptual activity, which is occurring in consciousness, and even how we interpret that influences our biological processes. So you can have, as I've said, two people go on a joyride, one enjoys it and makes dopamine and serotonin and opiates and oxytocin and anandamide, and somebody else makes too much cortisol and compromises their immune system or creates too much adrenaline, creates inflammation in the body. Just the same experience but different interpretation. So we've discussed in the past something called the happiness formula, which includes things like how we interpret experience, our attitude. Do we see the world as a problem? Do we see it as an opportunity? Are we feeling secure about our relationships, our finances, our job, our professional interactions? Are we working through life with meaning and purpose? Do we experience love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and divine emotions? Are we grateful? Every single activity, doesn't matter what the activity is, any experience will modulate your genes. And so here is where I want to go a little bit beyond what gene and epigenetics or geneticists and those who specialize in epigenetics are telling us. So what they're saying is that what they're saying is genetic information is digital and epigenetic information is analog. But they're both information. So when you start life as a fertilized egg, that's that egg, fertilized egg, is a bundle of information, compact information. And then epigenetics is the modulation of that information, and it's all happening in consciousness. Where else could it happen? Okay, it's all happening in awareness. Now, of course, awareness has two kinds of experiences: conscious experiences and unconscious experiences. Conscious experiences are like the one we're having right now, perception. But there are a lot of unconscious experiences that the cells in your body are having. They just don't surface to the level of your consciousness. So, but they do surface when something goes wrong. Okay, so I don't think of epigenetics as in the environment or genes as inherited necessarily. They're all actually symbolic representations of experiences, both of ourselves and of our ancestors. and they're represented in these digital and analog codes. And consciousness is what is ultimately creating the codes. So here is how I would like to think of reinventing the body through gene activation and modulation, and changing the genes of a microbiome through changing our both experience of perceptual activity, our interpretation of perceptual activity, and also through pratyahara and interoception and breathing techniques to go deep into the nature of what's happening inside our body, which is not available as conscious experience, but actually once we learn how to quieten the mind and put attention through different parts of the body like yoga nidra, and combine it with breathing pratyahara and intentional motor activity and observing experience non-judgmentally from a stance of witnessing awareness, we automatically move the body in the direction of self-regulation. Bottom line, we can change the printout that we call the body. It's a changing printout. It's a process. It's a verb. Your body is not a noun. It's an activity. And so integration of mind, body, and spirit can actually reinvent the entire body as a process. And recently I've been looking at the genetics of aging, and what I discovered, which is very interesting, is that our genes did not evolve to create aging. That was a very interesting thing for me to discover. So according to geneticists, our genes did not evolve to cause aging. Aging is a result of basically what is being referred to as epigenetic noise at the moment, which means self-repair mechanisms go off, or genes that cause inflammation get too active, and genes that cause self-regulation get underactive, all because of how we live our lives. So Sundra Golu says, do our thoughts influence gene activity? Yes, because thoughts are entangled with emotions, and emotions are entangled with behavior. Everything from whether we are addicted or feeling carefree, or we are feeling anxiety, or we are feeling joy, is all represented in the thought process. The thought is the interpretation of all experience. And if we understand that, then yes, in every word that we speak, whatever the word, if I say mother, if I say joy, if I say anger, if I say hostility, and I put my attention on that, then that through entanglement creates images and feelings and behaviors that will epigenetically modify our body in the direction of inflammation and therefore dysfunction. So yes, your thoughts will influence gene activity and the integration of the activity between genes and epigenetic modulation and the microbiome. There are very fancy names for all these, tags: acetylation, methylation, demethylation. There's no way, no need to understand the intricacies of these chemical tags, but just remember the chemical tags: genes, gene expression, epigenetics, microbiome, inflammatory markers, immune function, emotions, thoughts, feelings, digestive processes, dreams. Every experience you have is modulating this process that is being metabolized into your biological processes. So there's an expression in Ayurveda: if you want to know what your experiences were in the past, look at your body now. If you want to know if you want to know what your body will look like in the future, look at your experiences right now. And by changing your experiences, you can change your body. And these experiences are both perceptual activity, interpretation of perceptual activity, and the conscious choices that we make every moment in terms of eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, perceptual experience, interpretation of perceptual experience, thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires. So, what is the one intention you must have? Joyful, energetic body. What else? Loving, compassionate heart. What else? Reflective, alert mind. And what else? Lightness of being. No regrets, no anticipation, no resistance. Flow with the moment and experience life-centered awareness in this moment, which means instead of identifying with the experience, identify with the pure awareness of experiencing what you're experiencing. Identify with the pure awareness in which the experience is happening. Just that little shift will change your biology, and if you do it enough, you will change your biology in the direction of homeostasis, self-regulation. You might even reverse some of your biological processes that cause aging, because remember, there's no gene activity that causes aging directly. Aging is a mistake of our biology as a result of disruption of self-regulation. The highest self-regulation is to identify with pure consciousness. But as soon as we start experiencing anything, doesn't matter what we're experiencing, as soon as we start experiencing, the process of experience itself causes entropy. So that's what life is. It is both a dance between homeostasis and entropy. And life is actually the opposite of entropy. Entropy is also connected to what is called generation of heat and dissipation of heat, which creates the arrow of time. And in one way, aging is the metabolism of time also. So to transcend time through transcendence, and to understand that the body-mind is not the subject of experience, the body-mind is also the object of experience. All experience occurs in consciousness alone, and we metabolize experience, and all experience is entangled. And therefore the highest healing is transcendence. But the second highest healing is pure love, and everything that takes us in the direction of love. And then after that, thinking and acting, especially dogmatically, is the way to dysbiosis, entropy, inflammation, dis-ease, decrepitude, and ultimately death. But death is also built in a way to protect ourselves, because if you understand consciousness, death is a quantum leap in creativity, using the same information states, which in Eastern wisdom traditions we call karma, but using the same information states to create new context, new meaning, new quality of relationships, and a new experience of existence. Roya says, I'm confused. I thought that time is a man-made concept. Yes, time is a construct, but we metabolize the construct into another construct called the body. The body is also a construct. Okay. The universe is a construct. Everything that you have a word for is a construct. But constructs can be useful in creating maps to navigate the territory. The territory always is consciousness. Always is consciousness. It's the only territory. Okay, so I hope this helped a little bit, and very happy to have this conversation every day, and continue with this. Today we have some idea on how metabolism of experience creates unnecessary karmic baggage if we identify with the experience instead of the pure witnessing or the pure awareness in which the experience is happening. Shraddha says, can you please talk about loneliness? Loneliness is just being cut off from the web of life, and it's not the same thing as solitude. When you have experienced solitude and transcend all thought, you connect with all that is. But loneliness comes from fear, and that fear comes from anxiety and the anticipation of pain because of the memory of pain in the past. So there are many ways to address this, including witnessing your emotions, taking responsibility, expressing them in several ways, sharing them, releasing them, and being emotionally free at all times. Emotionally free means independent of melodrama. Just identify with the seer instead of the scenery, and you'll be free. The seer is the relatively non-changing, timeless factor in every changing, time-bound scenery. Okay, my friends, until next time.